This is, we're still in the Psalms today, and we're going to be in Psalm 40 today. If you have heard of, there's a really small Irish rock band named U2. They once made a song after this song called, it's a song called 40, and in this song, it says, I waited patiently for the Lord, and he inclined and heard my cry. And as I think about waiting, we're going to be talking about waiting on the Lord today. I think about waiting, and I just think there is probably nothing in this world that I hate more than waiting. I hate going to the DMV. I can't imagine hell being worse than the DMV. I hate waiting in line. I hate waiting in any way, shape, or form. I might lose some of you here, but I don't like baseball because you just wait so long, and it's just such a long game. It's just let the action happen, and there's something in the waiting that refines us and makes us more holy and more set apart into God. And as I was thinking about waiting, especially waiting on God, I thought about waiting for my wife, and waiting for in our dating relationship. There was a lot of waiting that happened. I remember I knew really immediately that this was the one that I wanted to marry, and I said. It was about 4 months into our dating relationship. I told Lauren, I went out on a limb and I said, I love you. And she cried. And she said nothing back. And for 2 days, I waited for Lauren to respond and say, I love you back. It was an awkward moment, but she said, I just need some time to process it. And then I remember being like, okay, I'm ready to get married to Lauren. I'm ready. I've got this. This is. I'm ready. And then I remember her parents saying, "Oh, slow down, Buster. Before you get married, we have a rule in our family. You have to wait the 4 seasons." So I had to wait 4 seasons, a whole year, before I proposed to her. And when I finally did propose to her, if you want to get diamonds, if you want to get jewelry, you talk to an Armenian, because every Armenian has some kind of hookup with money and diamonds. And I had an Armenian uncle that knew somebody that had rare diamonds, and I said, okay, I'm gonna pop the question. I'm ready, and I have to. The problem was that the guy that had the diamonds lived in San Francisco, and so I said, okay. I'm going to have to make up an excuse to get to San Francisco. And I don't know what it is about my mind, but I immediately thought, death. There's somebody, I'm going to tell her somebody in my family is dying. And so we went, or I was going to go, and I told Lauren, babe, my uncle, he's Armenian, he's really sick. He's on his last leg, and I'm probably going to have to go to San Francisco at any moment just to be down there as he's about to pass away and utter his last breath. And had I waited, all of that lying could have been done away with. It wasn't necessary had I waited, because the guy said he shipped the diamonds. But eventually I received the diamonds, and Lord asked me, hey Josh, how's your uncle doing? I've been praying for him. Is he better? And I just said, hey, it's been a miracle. He's healed. Everything's okay. And I just think, what in my life what would have been better in my life had I just waited? What if I just would have waited for things to happen? And I'm not a good waiter. And especially in our culture today, we have Amazon, we have YouTube, see things immediately. Like, we were at a cabin this last week, or 2 weeks ago, and they had VHS tapes. My kids had no idea what that black brick was, but I told Hannah, like, that's what we used to live off of. Those black bricks is how we used to watch all of our movies. You have to wait to rewind stuff. She has no idea what that even means. Have you ever felt like the phantom vibration in your pocket as you're waiting for a call? You feel this like, oh, I think I've got something. We are bad waiters, I think, in our culture. We want everything immediately. But there's something about waiting on the Lord that transforms us again, that makes us better people. And to be honest with you, one of the most difficult things about this church plant has been waiting. In every single ministry that I've been a part of, not to brag, God's done something where it's exploded instantaneously. My youth groups were on average about 100 people. And when I started the life group ministry at our last church, it grew from 100 people to 700 people almost immediately. And I think that I've been waiting here in this church planning process, just waiting to see God show up and to see people come. But in the waiting, I think God's been refining me, because I don't think when we first started this church that I was ready. I don't think I was a good enough leader yet. I wasn't mature enough. I wasn't wise enough. Maybe I'm not yet. But I think there's something that God does in the waiting that creates in you hearts that are ready to lead and become the people that you are supposed to be. I think that God is far more concerned with the destination, or less concerned with the destination than He is with the journey that we're on. That in the journey we become formed and conform more to the likeness of God. But oftentimes, we want it right now. David was a man that knew what it was to wait. He was somebody that was anointed king, but he still had to wait several years until he would take the kingship from this man named Saul. Not only that, the man named Saul was his father-in-law. Not only that, Saul was trying to actively kill him. And David had to wait upon the Lord as he was about to approach his kingly line, about to inherit the thing that God had promised to him. And it's no wonder that David would be able to write words like this in Psalm 40, chapter 1 through 3. He says this, I waited patiently for the Lord. He turned to me and heard my cry. He lifted me out of the slimy pit, out of the mud and mire. He set my feet on a rock and gave me a firm place to stand. He put a new song in my mouth, a hymn of praise to our God. And many will see and fear the Lord and put their trust in Him. And they'll put their trust in Him because of the pit that he was in and the way that God took him out of it. See, David was able to see firsthand somebody that wasn't very good at waiting, someone that wasn't patient, somebody that took for granted the things of God. And his name was Saul. Saul was somebody that wanted everything right now. But I want to tell you guys something. God is more concerned with who you are than what, when, or why. And you guys can write that down. God is more concerned with who than what, when, or why. We are very concerned with what's going to happen, when it's going to happen, and why it's going to happen. But God is concerned about who you are becoming when it's happening. God is concerned about the character that you form in those pits, in those valleys, and in that darkness. So Saul, the king that came before David, Israel's first king, it says this in 1 Samuel chapter 14, verse 35. Then Saul built an altar to the Lord. And then, have you ever had this where it's like instantaneously you mess up really bad? Like one chapter later in the Bible it says this, early in the morning Samuel got up and went to meet Saul, but he was told, Saul has gone to Carmel. There he has set up a monument in his own honor and has turned and gone on down to Gilgal. So somewhere in one chapter, Saul was building monuments to God, and then one chapter later, he's building monuments to himself. One chapter later, he switches. Instead of building and building his life on God, he doesn't wait, and he says, I want it all right now. I'm going to build a monument to myself. And And if we're not careful, we can be just like that, where we build monuments to ourselves. There's something important about the waiting that refines us and makes us better people. I think we forsake the blessing of Scripture and of God when we don't wait. And a really important question to ask, that I ask myself, am I doing this for God, or am I doing this for me? Am I building a monument to myself? Am I trying to make God famous, or am I trying to make me famous? Is this life that I'm living about God, or is it about making Josh Dolarian the coolest person in the world? I want to make sure that my life is all about building up God and not making a monument to myself. See, God is concerned with our character. God is, in fact, more concerned with our character than our circumstances. And it's often in this waiting that we become the people that we were meant to be. In fact, the only thing in your life that will last forever is your character. When you go to heaven, you're not going to take your cool shoes. You're not going to take your money. You're not going to take your bank account. You're not going to take your, X, Y, or Z. You're not going to take your pets, your chickens, whatever, with you to heaven. What you're going to take with you to heaven is your character. And oftentimes God uses our circumstances to form our character. And it's in the waiting that our character gets formed. It's in our character that we become the people that we were meant to be. See, when you wait on God, and in fact makes us stronger people. And you guys can write that down. When I wait on God, I become a stronger person. See, what does the waiting do? It makes us stronger. James, the brother of Jesus, knew a thing or two about waiting. Can you imagine being Jesus' brother? Like, Jaden's a really cool dude. But can you imagine, Jaden, if your brother was Jesus? Like, He's walking on water, he's perfect, he's building stuff all the time, and you're just living under the shadow of his wing. James, Jesus' brother, knew a thing or two about waiting. And he says this, consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, when you face trials of many kinds. I don't know about you, but when a trial comes my way, my first thought is not thank you. My first thought is like, this is horrible. I don't want to be in this. Because he says, the testing of your faith produces perseverance. Let your perseverance finish its work so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything. I believe that the faith that we have is like a muscle, that we have to exercise it, and trials and waiting on God allow us to become stronger people. James says, consider it pure joy when you encounter tests or trials of many kinds, because they make you stronger people. Have you ever met somebody that wants to become strong immediately? Have you ever met somebody that's like, New Year's here, I'm just going to become the strongest person at school, I'm going to become the strongest person on my camp, whatever it is, I'm going to be strong. I've had this happen so many times in my life where I've been doing martial arts since I was a little baby. And I've had so many instances where somebody has said, I'm going to come and try jiu-jitsu with you. And I always say the same thing. Take it real slow. Don't jump in too hard. I know it looks fun, but don't go crazy. And every time they go crazy, and usually throw up is involved. I remember taking one of my friends. He said, I'm really interested. I want to go into the law. I want to just try this thing out. I want to become stronger. And he's looking way less than he's actually doing. He's in there, and then I see him off to the side. And I say, hey, how you doing, man? I'm good. And another thing that he did was he didn't bring water, he brought Mountain Dew. And he's just chugging this Mountain Dew, like hyperventilating. It's horrible. And I see him, he's like, I'm good. And I was like, do you need anything? He's like, no. He's like, I want to get back out there. And as soon as he stands up, vomit everywhere, just covering the ground. It's nasty. I pick him up. I try to walk him away. He slips and rolls in his own puke. Worst first day ever. And did he come back? Absolutely not. He wanted it all right then and right there, and he thought he could do it. There's another guy, and he came in many years ago. He ate an entire pizza. I think the story is right before he came. And he went out there, and at the end of the practice, he just puked all over himself. And my teacher, his name's Jason, is so wise, and somebody that I admire greatly, and he's seen this happen many times. Jason said, "Hey, if you come back here, I'm going to clean up all your throw up. If you come back, I will clean up everything. You made me a promise, you're going to come back." And the guy came back. And when that guy was eventually promoted to his blue belt, that's a first rank in jiu-jitsu, Jason gave him his own belt. He said, "This is because you came back." And then this guy recently stuck to it. He recently got promoted to the middle belt, which is his purple belt. He had perseverance in him. And so often, when the trials come, we just say, no, I don't want to wait. I don't want to become the person that I'm supposed to be. As soon as the throw up hits the floor, we're just like, I'm out of here. But instead, God wants us to be people that would lean into the trials, lean into the waiting, and see where and how He's going to form us into the people that we are supposed to be. And I think it's so interesting when we look at this verse that it's not when trials come, or if trials come, rather, it's when they're going to come. Every single one of us this week, this month, next year is going to have something hard happen to us. And it's what we do with the trials that makes all the difference. Are we going to be people that wait on the Lord? Or are we going to be people that simply quit and say, this is too hard, this is too difficult, I can't handle this, I would rather move on and go to greener pastures. See, the greener pastures look really bright on the other side, but oftentimes they're not. What is the outcome of waiting in the trials? James says you receive perseverance, you receive completeness, and you won't lack anything. Unlike Saul, David was a man that built monuments to God, and I hope that we become people that build monuments to God rather than building monuments to ourselves. See, when we wait upon the Lord, we are people that put God on the throne of our lives. And you guys can write that down. Waiting puts God on the throne of my life. When I wait upon Him, I'm saying, you're God, and I'm not. And I will patiently wait for you to move in my life. So, in the meantime, while Saul is after David, trying to kill him, trying to take his life, he knows that David has been anointed king, and he's wanting to take David's life. He's actively pursuing David. David sees Saul. And it says this, that David came to the sheep pens along the way. A cave was there, and Saul went to relieve himself. It's in the Bible. David and his men were far back in the cave. The men said, "This is the day the Lord spoke of when He said to you, I will give your enemy into your hands, for you to deal with as you wish." Then David crept up unnoticed and cut off a corner of Saul's robe. So Saul must have been going to the restroom there for quite a while. David was able to slip in, take a corner off the robe. David went out of the cave and called out to Saul, "My Lord, the king." Then Saul looked behind him. David bowed down and prostrated himself with his face to the ground. He said to Saul, "Why do you listen when the men say David is bent on harming you? This day you have seen with your own eyes how the Lord delivered you into my hands in the cave. Some urged me to kill you, but I spared you. I said, I will not lay my hand on the Lord because he is the Lord's anointed. He could have really easily killed Saul in a humiliating way. Just took a corner of his robe. See, my father, look at the piece of robe in my hand. I cut off the corner of your robe, but I did not kill you. He could have easily killed Saul. Why did he not kill Saul? Because he was the Lord's anointed and God told him to wait. I don't know if you've ever faced something that serious, where someone's actively trying to kill you, take your life, has an army against you, and you're willing to wait. But David waited patiently for the Lord. He said, I'm going to give this into your hands, God. I'm going to give this struggle, this trial, this pain into your hands. And I will not harm Saul, even though he's trying to harm me. And eventually, the throne was given to David. Saul did die, and peace over Israel was spread out because David waited. What do you need to wait on? What do I need to wait on? I'll tell you this. In my life, the greatest victories I've achieved, the greatest things that I have done, are really things that I have very little to do with. Where I prayed for something and I can look back at it and say, oh, I literally had nothing to do with that. It was only God that worked. I waited on the Lord and he worked and he moved in miraculous ways. I love the moments. We had one in our men's Bible study this week where you look back on it and you can say, oh, that was only God there. There's no other way that this happened. I love those moments when I just patiently wait and I allow God to take the throne of my life. I don't build a monument to myself and I say, God, you be the Lord, you take charge, and I'm going to simply humbly submit to your leading. But I will say this, and I couldn't think about it, or I couldn't think of another word to describe it. Then it's like a cowboy word. Waiting on God requires it's a 4-letter word, grit. My hope as a pastor is that I would have a soft heart and a hard hide. That I would have tough skin and a soft heart. And if we're going to be people that wait on God, it requires a lot of grit. It's difficult to wait. There's actually 2 words in the Greek for strength. It's interesting. There's 2 words in the Greek for strength. One is dunamis, and it's the ability to do things beyond your natural ability. That's when you're just really strong and you can do something incredible. And then the other one is exousia, and that's the ability to not do things that we have the ability to do. Exousia is practicing self-restraint. So Jesus, as he's going to the cross in John chapter 10, verse 18, he says, no one takes my life from me, but I lay it down on my own accord. I have the ability to lay it down and the authority to take it up again. This command I received from my Father. See, this word authority is exousia. It means self-restraint. See, David practiced self-restraint in the cave. And Jesus practiced self-restraint on the cross. He was mocked, he was spit on, he was beat. Why did he endure that? And how did he endure that? It was his inner strength. His love led him to the cross, but his self-restraint kept him on the cross. He could have called, the Bible says, legions of angels to save him, to rescue him from the cross. But on the cross, he practiced exousia, patience, waiting on the Lord. And why did he do that? It wasn't his strength that it wasn't his outward strength that kept him on the cross. It was his inward determination to stay on that cross that kept him there. And why did he do that? inward strength that he exhibited on the cross was for you and me. Jesus saved us through his inward strength. Jesus saved us through his self-control. Jesus saved us because he did what David did in waiting on the Lord. Love led Jesus to the cross, but his power and his self-restraint, self-restraint kept him there. Man, that sentence would have been really good if it came out perfectly. Sorry. We're waiting on the Lord. What else does it do? It produces integrity within us. I was talking to Dale right before the service started, and in the 90s, there was a president named Bill Clinton. I don't know if you've heard of him. He was the president of the United States of America, and he had a moral failing in which he went in front of the whole nation and said, "I did not have sexual relations with that woman." He told everybody that he did not do this. He did not do a thing that he clearly did. And it seems like in our culture today, integrity is not something that we uplift or we think is very valuable. I just think today, in our culture, it seems like the presidents just, we wouldn't be shocked at all if something like that happened. And that was just 20 years ago. It seems like more scandal, more intrigue, less integrity are being presented to us every day in the political spectrum and in our Hollywood spectrum. It seems like our integrity as a nation is being bankrupt more and more and more and more. And my goal is to be the same person that I am on stage as I am off stage. I want to be an integrous person. That when I stand up here and I tell you I love my wife with all my heart, and I go home, I actually love my wife with all my heart. I want to be a transparent person and a transparent pastor. I don't want to say things up here that I don't do at home. And I want to be a person that is full of integrity. And I would say this, that integrity takes a lot of difficult. It's difficult to obtain integrity. And I think that's why praying is so important. Because this is something that my father-in-law always told me. He told me, "Josh, you need to pray as if it depends on God and work as if it depends on you." I see David as he's in that cave working really hard. I don't see him just simply letting time pass him by. He's actively waiting. And in that waiting for God, he developed an army and he developed the character that it would take to become a king that would rule a nation. I think Jesus on the cross, although he was praying to God, he didn't just stay on the cross and do nothing. He looked at the guy to his left and he said, your sins are forgiven. He said, you will surely see me in heaven, paradise. You will be with me. Waiting on the Lord takes work, but it also requires integrity. That in the small moments and in the little moments of our lives, we are creating the character within us to be formed as people that love and care for God. I think it takes incredible integrity to be people that steward our finances well. That we would just say, God, this, and I don't want to sound convicting or harsh, but when you say, God, I'm going to give you a tithe, I'm going to give you 90% or 10% of my money, you're saying, God, I'm going to trust you with all of my finances. And what happens when you do that, I can attest to this, you're going to have a supernatural covering over your finances. But nobody's looking. Nobody's going to say, we're not another church that would knock on your door and be like, hey, no one's going to look. But it takes integrity to say, God, I'm going to give you the money that you give back to you the money that you have given me. David writes this: I waited patiently on the Lord. He turned and heard my cry. He lifted me out of the slimy pit, out of the mud and mire. He set my feet on a rock and gave me a firm place to stand. Put a new song in my mouth, a hymn of praise to our God. And what does it say? It says, many will see and fear the Lord and put their trust in him. I think it's so interesting that out of the depths of our brokenness, God creates the breadth of his beauty. Um, God never wastes a hurt in our lives. I don't know where you guys have been, what you've seen, what has been done to you, what you've done, but God will never waste that hurt. David was certainly in a lot of slimy pits. He was in a lot of horrible situations. And what does he do out of those slimy? He tells us what he does out of those pits. God uses that pit to create a new song that he sings. God uses that pit to create a song that he sings. And what is the song for? The song is for the salvation of many people. Just like Jesus was put in a pit for 3 days, he created a new song. And what was that new song? It was the salvation for all people that would say, if you confess Jesus as Lord and believe that he rose from the dead, you will be saved. God put a new song on David's lips, and he also put a new song on Jesus' lips. God never wastes a hurt. God uses our most painful situations and creates beauty out of them. I love that, and I love that our God is a God of redemption. Our God is a God of patience. Our God is a God that uses the hard and horrible situations and transforms them into beauty. Maybe you're a child of divorce like me, and you'd say, I'm going to sing a new song in my family. That brokenness is going to end right here. I'm going to love my wife for the rest of my life. Maybe you have experienced incredible pain with addiction. You say, no, this is going to end here in my life. I'm going to break this. I'm going to sing a new song. Just like David, when you're in the pit, you have this opportunity. Am I going to wait patiently, or am I going to build a monument to myself like Saul? You have, and I have, this opportunity to wait patiently for the Lord. And what does the scripture say? He will incline and hear our cry. And the good news is that God inclined and heard Jesus' cry, so that everyone who turns to him can be saved. So I'm just going to invite our worship team up here. And we're going to sing a song together, sing songs of God's deliverance, how he's brought us out of the pits, brought us into newness of life, restored us, and made us whole and holy on account of his mercy and favor. God, I just thank you. I thank you, and I just feel a little awkward talking about waiting patiently because I'm so bad at it. But I pray that you would forgive me for the ways that I've overstepped my bounds. I pray that anybody here that's just waiting patiently for you, whatever it is, I pray that you would just cover them with your grace. God, I pray for us that we would be a people that just say yes to you. Say, yes, you're going to lead me, that you're going to redeem the brokenness and turn it into something beautiful. God, I pray for us that we might be a people that would just say, you brought me out of the pits, and you put a new song in my mouth. Instead of building monuments to ourselves, God, may we build monuments to you to make your name famous. It's in your name I pray.
Saving